On the phone, we have a legendary college football coach. He also coached in the NFL, former ASU coach, Frank Kush. How you doing today, Mr. Kush?
Pretty good. You forgot the USFL and the Canadian Football League also.
You've been all over the block.
I'm all over the countries. Right. I really enjoyed them all. In fact, we won. And the only place I got fired was at Arizona State.
And that's where you had your greatest success.
That's what they all say about coaches. Success, fired, hard.
Do you wish you were coaching today with what these coaches are making?
No. Well, no. No, I figure what the reality of life is, the way things have changed so dramatically monetarily, it's kind of, you laugh at it, but again, on the other hand, it was an opportunity when I came out of college to go on and coach, and I had been in the military, and then came out and got the job at Arizona State. Had to hitchhike all the way from Fort Benning, Georgia, which is in Columbus, Georgia, to Phoenix City, and it gets Phoenix City, Alabama, then Phoenix City, Arizona, and I came went right through Tempe. Forgot where the heck I came from.
Now, once upon a time, you were a pretty good football player yourself.
I was very fortunate. I played at Windber High School in Pennsylvania, where I made All-State. At that time, they only picked 11 guys. And because of that, and having a pretty good academic background in high school, I went on and had about 15 offers to go on to college. When I went to Washington, Lee, and Lexington, Virginia for one semester, and I found out that's where I missed girls. It was a male student body, and there weren't any females around there, and I thought I better get the hell out of there, and which I did. I went to transfer to Michigan State.
So did Biggie Munn recruit you, or how did you end up at Michigan State?
Duffy Doherty had recruited. Duffy Doherty was who became the head coach eventually at Michigan State, was an assistant at Michigan State at the time, and he recruited Pennsylvania, and he recruited me out of Western Pennsylvania, Windber. And I went on to Michigan State. We were very fortunate. We only lost one game in 3 years, and we were national champs in 1960.
How did you play defensive line at 150 pounds?
Well, you had to be quick and elusive and don't let anybody block you. And again, I played both offense and defense. At that time, you had to play both ways. And again, offensively, it was all cross-blocking, trap blocking. You didn't have to be McGill, gorilla, block a guy one-on-one most of the time, maybe periodically in the past. But as a general rule, you had to be very elusive and quick. And fortunately, it paid off defensively, and that's where the greatest asset I had was being able to recognize and respond to various plays off of offense and get to the ball carrier.
Now, your coach there was Biggie Munn. As you mentioned, he had a pretty good assistant in Duffy Doherty. He had another one in a fellow named
Duffy Doherty, Earl Edwards, Steve Siebold. Yeah, they had some great assistant coaches. Duffy had recruited me out of Western Pennsylvania. Biggie Munn was the head coach. And he was a great teaching coach, and they all were great teachers. They had to be in that era, and they still are. I mean, they still have to have that perspective as far as making any advancement from coming out of high school and college as being great teachers and disciplinarians.
And your quarterback, Willie Thrower, was a pretty good player, too.
Willie Thrower, Tommy Usick, and Al Dorrell were the quarterbacks at the time. And Willie Thrower was from New Kensington, Pennsylvania, and he was a senior when he was the first-string quarterback. We were national champs that year.
Another of the Spartan assistant coaches was a guy by the name of Dan Devine.
He wasn't there at the time. He was the high school coach at the time in Michigan. Then he went to he coached as assistant coach at Michigan State after I'd graduated. Then he got the head coaching job at Arizona State, and then Duffy Doherty called me, who was the head coach at the time at Michigan State, and said, "Hey, what are you going to do when you get out of the military?" And I said, "Well, I didn't know." And he said, "Well, Dan Devine, who took a job at Arizona State, I didn't even know where Arizona was, Dan Devine." And he said, "Give him a call." So I called him, and that's how I got the job. I had to hitchhike all the way from Fort Benning, Georgia, which is in Columbus, Georgia, the south central part of Georgia, all the way to Tempe, Arizona. In fact, I went through Tempe, missed the stadium. I was looking for it, and one of the guys that I hitchhiked a ride from, we went by. He says he's still looking for a stadium. I got about 24th Street in Tempe and found out that that's too far, and I had to hitchhike back to Tempe.
You weren't married at the time, I'm assuming.
No, I was single. No, I was single. I was a ROTC student. I ended up being a first lieutenant in the infantry at Fort Benning, Georgia, and then I got married after I left Columbus.
How did the military prepare you for coaching?
Well, I was really impressed with the military from the standpoint of the disciplines and the teaching, etc. I thought they did a commendable job. It was Fort Benning, Georgia, which was the infantry school of the United States Army, and still is. I think they did a great job of teaching and teaching basically the basics and the disciplines and abide by rules and regulations, etc. But I thought that the basic disciplines of the military, from starting off from a squad of 9 people up to a platoon of about I'd say 27 or so, then company commander, and then on advanced up and anything else. But the teaching, I thought, in the military was exceptionally good from the standpoint of not only the tactics of bomb warfare, but also the personal touches with the association with people.
I remember Dan Devine from his time at Missouri. He was always very organized, to the smallest detail.
He was a very knowledgeable coach. He was a very knowledgeable, very intelligent guy, and he did a commendable job there at Missouri.
How surprising was it that he left after a couple of seasons? Because I know he took the job that Frank Broyles had for a year, and Broyles moved on to Arkansas.
Well, that was typical of the profession in that era. Is here they and go Lamar and looking for advancements monetarily and recognition, etc. So I think it was quite common at the time.
And then when he left, if I understand the story right, you were about 29 and Devine told you that you were too young, even though Devine had been that young when he became a head coach.
Yeah, he told me I was too young, and then when he and I thought to myself, what the hell is he talking about? He was young himself when he got a job, so I'll show him how young I am. So I took the job at Arizona State College.
Yeah, well, and I believe Devine's wife, Jo, intervened at some point to try to straighten Devine out about you being too young.
I don't think wives are going to straighten coaches out.
That doesn't work that way?
I think some girl off the street may, but I don't think the wives do.
What was it like taking over that team?
Pardon?
What was it like when you became a head coach?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was kind of interesting because you're involved extensively in the recruiting, and I recruited back east in Pennsylvania and Ohio and New Jersey. And you had to develop a great association, but the thing that you have to remember, I was fortunate to come up from a family where my father was a disciplinarian, and the high school coaches I had back in Windber, Pennsylvania, were disciplinarians and great teachers, and I think that was a lesson that I learned there from my dad, doing the right thing, and he would show you, he would demonstrate, and then you better do it properly. And again, our high school coaches were the same way. They were exceptionally good teaching coaches and disciplinarians, and they really cared for you. In fact, periodically, I remember like John Kalchak, who was our coach, one of the years our head coach, and the weather was really bad in western Pennsylvania, and they used to drive, and he lived in Johnstown, which was an adjacent city about 9 miles from Windber, and then the weather was so bad that he gave us a ride a couple of times from high school back to the mining town, Mine 35, again. But that's the compassion that they had, and they really cared for the student athletes.
Were you prepared for the weather of Arizona?
Well, no, I thought I didn't have to worry about going to hell because coming to Arizona, I thought, what have I got myself into? I said, well, you've been kind of a nasty rascal. You just get indoctrinated, and what it's like going to be in hell. So that's the way I got involved in it. Yeah, I came in through Globe in Miami on a Sunday morning, and there's not too many people on the street, and there's not too many people at Globe in Miami, period. And I was awed by the heat. Then when I came down in the valley, it got worse, and I thought, man, I'm really in hell.
Were you able to use the heat to your advantage?
Well, you made sure that the players were conditioned for it. Right, exactly, yeah. Right. When you say take advantage, I don't think that's the key to it. I think the key to it is in knowing what it takes to be in condition in the heat in contrast to the cool or inclement types of weather where it changes dramatically. But again, you had to get them adjusted to the heat because the humidity was so low at that time, and it still is. And again, so you had to get them adjusted and make sure it wasn't a psychological factor with them, and that was because of conditioning and doing a great deal of running.
Now, if my memory serves me correctly, when you were coaching, a lot of people followed the Woody Hayes 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You had a much more diverse offense than that.
Well, yeah, we had quite a diversified offense. I acquired that knowledge at Michigan State. Michigan State had the multiple offense. Michigan State College at the time had the multiple offense, and they used a single wing and double wing and T formation, etc., and trap blocking, cross blocking, all the different schemes, etc., and everything else. And that's where I acquired the knowledge from, and brought it out here. And under Coach Dan Devine, it just advanced it because he was a Michigan State former coach also.
How did you develop the bull in the ring drill?
Well, that was just a discipline for making mental mistakes. If you made a mental mistake, and physical mistakes, that's part of the game. If there's somebody you're playing across from you that's better than you and is going to block you and does the job properly, that's part of the game. But mental mistakes, that's where you paid the price to get in the bull in the ring. And again, you wanted to stay the hell out of the bull in the ring because you got the hell kicked out of you from about 10, 11 guys. So again, the bull in the ring was predominantly a no mental error consequence.
Now, you almost left Arizona State to take the job at Pittsburgh. In fact, you had accepted the job and then you changed your mind. What happened during that time?
Well, they didn't have any transportation for the assistant coaches, or the salaries for the assistant coaches was way below average. I wanted to hire guys from Arizona State to go with me, and because of the limited salaries from the University of Pittsburgh at the time, it wasn't very feasible at that time. So that's why I changed my mind.
You coached a lot of Hall of Fame athletes, Mike Haynes, you had Curly Culp, Charlie Taylor. Was there one player who you felt was the best you ever coached?
No, we had a lot of them. We had Danny White, Mark Malone's. I guess we were fortunate to have. I think I attributed that to the recruiting process. In addition to that, the great teaching coaches they had from high school and art. We had great teaching coaches: Larry Quintero, Dick Tamburo. I can mention all those guys' names, Dick Corick and a whole bit and everything else. And again, I think the key to it is the coaching and the basically teaching, whatever word you want to use, and then the mental disciplines. And I think we had great mental disciplines that we all acquired from our high school careers and college careers.
You also had African American players at a time when there was segments of college football that really didn't recruit those players.
Well, you never said the word African American. You just recruited them because they were athletes and good students. And again, I think that was the key to it. And again, we went into Pennsylvania. I recruited a lot of kids in Pennsylvania because at that time, geographically and historically, from the standpoint of prejudice, there was, it was there. And again, you got an opportunity to get the kid out of there and bring him out to the Wild West, where it was all about cowboys and Indians in contrast to the blacks of late.
You had Reggie Jackson for a short time on the team too, right?
Who? Reggie Jackson?
Yes.
Yeah. He was from Philadelphia. He played high school baseball. He was a great high school athlete. Bobby Winkles was the baseball coach at Arizona State, and I talked to Bobby Winkles about him being a great, combo athlete, both in baseball and football at the collegiate level. And Bobby Winkles, when we brought Reggie out for a visit, Bobby talked to him. He talked to him about playing baseball, and that's when Reggie decided he would like to play both baseball and football. He was a great all-around athlete.
Yeah, Reggie played at Cheltenham High in Philadelphia, but I think he probably made the right choice with going with baseball.
Well, it depends on. He had a lot of success. You know, he was a great athlete. Now he had equal amount of success at the collegiate level. But, you know, collegiate level is more of a team sport in contrast to baseball, where it's an individual performance. Whether you're playing at bats or out in the field or whatever it may be. Again, so there's no question in my mind that he would have been a great college football player.
My favorite quarterback before Dan Marino was Danny White, because Danny could just seem like he could get it done. I never understood why he never became a football coach in the NFL.
Well, because he's smart enough to know that the coaching profession is very questionable, and I think that's why he was smart enough to get. I think he got a degree in the business world, and then wanted to do the same thing, because he got some great advice probably from his dad, Wilfred White, who was a great player at Arizona State College at that time, and then played for the Chicago Bears. And I'm sure his old man advised him not to play the hell with pro ball, get a job and start working.
You seem like you had a good run at quarterback. Was there one position you recruited first and foremost?
No, not necessarily. We recruited athletes, and I think I think our coaches did a commendable job. We recruited a kid, whether he was a running back or say a defensive back, or say possibly a defensive lineman or defensive secondary, and we had great teaching coaches. Like our secondary coach was Fred Glick, who I thought was one of the most outstanding college coaches, and he did a commendable job of teaching. And Larry Contreras, a defensive coach, and again and Dick Corick, I could mention all those guys' names. They were all individual, exceptionally good. And again, I think that was the reason our kids had the success at the collegiate level.
I thought it was one of your key recruits was your kicker when you won in the Fiesta Bowl, Danny Kush.
I think I knew his mother pretty well. And his mother used to say, if he doesn't play, you don't play. So he played for 4 years.
Was that 1975 season?
Right. Yeah, we played in the Fiesta Bowl. He had 3 field goals. He was exceptionally good. Yeah.
Was that your favorite season?
No, it's hard to evaluate and say your favorite season. Your favorite season is the one where you have success and you get the enjoyable and you have a great association with the players. And again, and it was true throughout my career. I enjoyed it. We were fortunate, and again, so the whole coaching career, from the standpoint of when I started as assistant coach and on through collegiate into pro ball, is the association with the players makes a difference.
What was the difference between coaching college and coaching pros?
The quality and quantity of talent at pro sports is remarkably different than the collegiate level. At the collegiate level, you may have 1 or 2 kids on a college team that are going to be potential pro players, where in the pro players, they're all that way. And again, very competitive, both mentally and physically. And again, I think the difference is, again, the mental attitude, and I think that comes from the coaching staff, perpetuating that type of an attitude, what it's going to take to be successful at the collegiate level and the pro level. The quality and quantity in pro sports, to me, is remarkable.
Was it tough when ASU dismissed you? Were you worried about trying to get another job?
No, it's one thing you didn't worry about. No. Again, as I mentioned, I had various opportunities, and again, if you're established and you have an association with the institution, the administration, whether it's the various coaches, etc., and everything else, and I think the key to it is enjoying it and being successful. And the pro ball is a lot more impersonal.
And I would assume it's a lot more business too.
Well, that's when I say it's more impersonal. At the collegiate level, you're there, number one, to get an education for the student athletes, and then the disciplines. Well, the disciplines first, then the education, and then athletics. But in pro ball, it's all about pro sport. You better be able to do it, or it's going to go you're going to be on the highway hitchhiking.
Did the nature of the kids you recruited at Arizona State, did that change during the course of your career? Or
No, we recruited kids, and I think our coaches made the difference from the standpoint if you get a kid from a indigent background or, say, from a different background than each and others, and I think it was up to the coaches, assistant coaches at the collegiate level, the disciplines, number one, socially, number two, academically, number three, athletically, is they were doing the appropriate thing while they were in college, because so few of them, I think something like 2 or 3% are ever going to play pro football. So again, I think the key to it is that developing that association, making them being aware of why they're at the collegiate level. And that's number one was academics, number two was social, number three was athletics.
Do you feel that ASU could have done more to support you back in the late 70s when you had that issue with the punter?
Pardon?
Do you feel ASU could have done more to support you when Kevin Rutledge filed that lawsuit?
Well, that's our society. Here they and go tomorrow. I have the less said, the best said.
How did you end up coaching the Colts in Baltimore and then Indianapolis?
Well, I went to Canada first. Joe Zuger, one of our former players here at Arizona State, was one of the administrators at Hamilton Tiger Cats, and I'm sure he was familiar about my background, and I'd recruited him out of high school in Pennsylvania, from western Pennsylvania and around Pittsburgh. And then he talked to me about the possibility of coming up there, and I jumped at it immediately and got up to Hamilton Tiger Cats and was up there, and then I got the opportunity to go on to the Baltimore Colts and the Indianapolis Colts. And again, I'm sure that is attributed to my association previously at the college level with various pro owners and coaches, and George Hallis, who had been the owner of the Chicago Bears, probably had a lot to do with recommending me to go on to coach pro ball at Canada and then on now the Baltimore Colts.
Did Hallis talk to you at all about possibly becoming the Bears coach? Because he was looking for a coach at that time too.
Well, yeah, he didn't talk to me. I found out afterwards that he was the one that highly recommended me. And again, he never talked to me about going on. A job is a job, and again, that was a profession at the time, still is.
I saw an ESPN special, and they mentioned that when Elway didn't want to play for the Colts, that the Colts, some of the front office, and I believe it was you, wanted them to draft Dan Marino instead because you felt Marino could be a great player.
Well, yeah, there's no question in my mind that there were some great quarterbacks. Those were two of them, and then Mike Pagel, who was at Arizona State at that time, was equally as good. Didn't receive the recognition, but we finally took Mike, and Mike did the job.
In 1995, you were inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. Is that the culmination of a coaching career?
Well, you never think about it when you're coaching. Whatever happens, happens. And if you have the success and you attribute that to the players you worked with and the coaches you worked with, and I was forever honored about being selected at that level because it puts you with an elite group of people that probably went through the same grind reel that you went through with maybe a high school coach or college coach, and then in the pro ball and getting the opportunity to be recognized for what you did. So again, it was a matter of recognition. I attribute that to the assistant coaches and the players.
Was it tough coaching the Colts with them moving from Baltimore to Indianapolis?
No, it was the Mayflower midnight move. In fact, I was as surprised as anybody else. Was old man Irsay, the owner of the Colts, come in on one Sunday and says, "We're moving to Indianapolis," and I said, "Where's Indianapolis?" But that's the way it was at that time. Here they ain't going tomorrow. He brought the truck with him.
Yeah, he didn't have you drive in a truck?
Yeah, we went in the truck, exactly.
He didn't ask you to drive it, though.
No, I was there with the driver, right? He was a legitimate mover in transportation of household goods and football equipment in this case.
What I never understood was why Elway didn't want to play for the Colts. What his problem was?
Well, I think that he, because of the association that Irsay had and how tough Frank Kush was, etc., and everything else. And you know, and he came from a different environment at the collegiate and going into pro ball. So I think that was one of those mental things that you run across in our society.
So I think his dad kind of babied him at Stanford.
Pardon?
I think his dad kind of pampered him and babied him at Stanford.
Well, I'm sure his dad had something to do with it. You know.
Did you know Jack Elway?
No, I didn't know him personally. No, I didn't know him. No.
Okay. So it becomes a matter of Frank Kush's reputation as being something
I'm sure
of a hard
that's
ass?
what it was. Right. Being, you know, the demanding and, you know, being the tough SOB, you know, and again, that was probably was transferred from the old man to the kid.
Who do you think the best player you ever saw play in college was out of all the schools you played against?
Well, you know, it's kind of difficult because you had so many. I can mention Danny White and Mark Malone, like the kids we had at Arizona State, Joe Zuger. It's hard to evaluate and compare them unless they're competing against each other. And again, I think there were a lot of great collegiate athletes at that era, and a lot of them when I was playing as a player at Michigan State, and then there's still so many today that are great athletes. And again, but the level of competition in the quality of competition makes a difference of whether that individual gets a maximum out of he has. It's a combination of physical and mental capabilities.
I'll tell you a guy who probably give you a lot of nightmares or sleepless nights was Earl Campbell.
yeah, he was a great one.
How gratifying was it to be welcomed back at Arizona State?
Well, I enjoyed Arizona State. Arizona State was a relatively small college when I came here with Dan Devine in the 50s, and then it progressively grew not only, say, athletically, but socially and academically, and became one of the premier institutions in the United States. And then again, it was, you know, really recognized for the community interest with the city of Tempe and the Phoenix people, and the metropolitan area was great supporters of Arizona State athletics, and we had a great number of boosters that supported the program. And again, I think that's why it made it more enjoyable.
How did it feel when they named the stadium after you?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stadiums are named after different people. That's part of it. You look up there and say, "Who's that bozo?" You know. You know, I just that's part of the history of the game.
Is there anything you miss about coaching?
No, I enjoyed it. It was a great opportunity for me to coming out of college and going on and coaching in the military, and then coaching at Arizona State. Again, the opportunities. Again, I enjoyed coaching. I enjoyed the association with the players, the recruiting, the whole process of collegiate coaching to me was probably the most enjoyable thing. And I'm talking about from the standpoint of recruiting on to teaching, and then getting the maximum out of each player, and being a great disciplinarian yourself from the standpoint of. And I love to see people be successful. And again, the more success they had, then again you feel grateful that you were fortunate to have that youngster with you on the team, and we were fortunate to have a lot of good ones.
How do you go undefeated and not win the national championship? I still don't understand that.
Well, again, the geographically recognition. We were not recognized as a powerhouse in that era. And again, where's Arizona at? They probably thought the Geronimo and Cochise were still there. So, didn't know anything about football players.
Well, you would go from the Midwest, let's say Nebraska, all the way to the West Coast, and there's nothing in between there. It's this sort of wasteland of desert and God knows what.
Cowboys.
Cowboys and cactus and sagebrush. And, that was the era before.
Right, the media.
Yeah, that's before you had ESPN.
That's exactly right, and television.